have two very similar scripture readings this morning. First one is from the first chapter of Genesis. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and morning the first day. Our other reading is from the book of Job. Job was an unfortunate man who had all sorts of terrible things happen to him which threatened his faith. And near the end of the book, there's a section where God is asking Job a lot of questions. And Job really does not know what to say. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the heavenly beings shouted for joy? Or who shut in the sea with doors when it burst out from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and thick darkness its swaddling band, and prescribed bounds for it, and set bars and doors, and said, "Thus far you come and no farther, and here shall your proud waves be stopped. Have you commanded the morning since the days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, so that it might take hold of the skirts of the earth, and the wickedness be shaken out of it? It is changed like clay under the seal, and it is dyed like a garment. Light is withheld from the wicked, and their uplifted arm is broken. Have you entered into the springs of the sea and walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been revealed to you, and have you seen the gates of deep darkness? Have you comprehended the expanse of the earth? Declare if you know all this." Job did not know what to say. I retired 21 years ago, and in that period of time I preached 3 times. So I have not preached regularly for a long time. I wrote to my daughter, who is a minister, and I said, "I'm a little worried because I'm not nervous about Sunday. I'm not nervous at all. I'm terrified. But we'll see how it goes." We were walking across the campus to have lunch with the dean. My friend was a development officer, and I knew what she and the dean wanted from me: more money. But during our walk, we talked about another matter. She was telling me how she had grown up in a very conservative fundamentalist church that no longer spoke to her. She joined an Episcopal church, which she came to love and in which she was very active. She was happy about the change, but she said to me, "You know, it is really hard to believe in God today. With all the technology and science and new discoveries that we have now, it is hard to find God." She's not the only one saying that these days. So you probably noticed from the cover of the bulletin that my approach this month is going to be to get back to the basics, back to the basic fundamental ideas of the Christian faith. And one of those, of course, is belief in God. Can we believe in God today? In October, the Catholic Church is having a meeting of bishops in Rome to discuss the fact that many young people have left the church. And those that have stayed have many questions and many concerns about it. The Catholic Church is not the only one with those issues. Churches everywhere are in decline. Yesterday, I went to the funeral of a friend of mine who had been a faculty member at the seminary. And there are a lot of us retired type clergy standing around talking. And part of the conversation was about the decline of churches. We talked about churches that many of us had known, many of us had served, that had once been strong, vigorous churches, are now down to just very small congregations. The best many churches can do today is hold their own. So it may be helpful to get back to the basics again about what we're all about as a church. One of Ronald Reagan's sons regularly speaks on a TV commercial for the Freedom From Religion Foundation. It's an organization of atheists. Atheists are more and more coming out of the closet and are much more vocal than they used to be. Sally and I make an annual retreat at the Abbey of Gethsemane near Bardstown, a Trappist monastery. We've been going there for years. And we love spending a week there. It's peaceful, it's quiet, it's beautiful. And over the years, I've made friends with some of the monks. I had a conversation with one that lasted about an hour in which we solved every problem of the world. He told me that he had been there for 60 years. Imagine that, 60 years, living in a monastery with a group of people you can never get away from. They're all there. And I congratulated him on that perseverance, but he said to me, you know, I have doubts. I have doubts. How is your faith? Do you have more questions than you used to have? I was impressed that in your welcoming statement that you have in the bulletin, that you welcome people who have levels of doubt. I think a lot of us have levels of doubt. With all the new knowledge, technology, science, and change happening so quickly for us, it's not easy to find God these days. Now, as a minister, I want to say right off, I don't have any doubts about the existence of God, but I do have a lot of questions, and we will deal with some of those during the 3 months that I'm here with you. But for this morning, I would like to put on the record 4 reasons why I believe in God. First reason came from a writer named Evelyn Underhill, one of the great writers on spiritual matters in the first half of the 20th century. She was British, and she wrote a classic book about religious experience. It was called Mysticism. She studied 19 centuries of Christian religious experience, how people have sensed the presence of God in their lives. And she said that religions and religious faith began with an awareness of transcendence. An awareness of transcendence. What did she mean by that? Those are big words. An awareness of transcendence. What she meant was that some people sense that there is something more than what we immediately experience around us in our lives. We have a dear friend that we love very much who says she can only believe what she can see. One way we receive knowledge is through our 5 senses. We see things, we hear things, we can touch things, we can smell things, We can taste things. And when we use our five senses about something, we know that what we experience is real. But some people believe that there's something else beyond that, something that transcends that, something that goes beyond our experiences with our senses. We use our minds to understand things. We think, we develop ideas, we evaluate, we use reason and logic to try to understand reality. But for some, there is an awareness that there's something beyond the limitations of our reasoning powers. Sometimes we have questions for which there seems to be no reasonable answer at all. Our reason and our minds and our five senses have limitations. Is there something beyond them? Something we haven't experienced with either our minds or our senses? As a former Secretary of Defense famously said, we don't know what we don't know. We cannot always understand why things happen like they do. We wonder about chance, about fate, about coincidence. Why were all of us in this room born in this good land and not in a poor third world country where there's a civil war and constant suffering? Why among all the peoples of the world are we so blessed here? My daughter, who teaches at Harvard Divinity School, was telling me about a conversation she had with one of her foreign students. And the foreign student said, "Don't kid yourself. America is where everybody wants to be." Why are we so blessed? On the other hand, why do we have the experience occasionally of seeing good people suffer and bad people prosper and succeed? We don't understand that. We can't figure out why that happens. Why do we continue to fight wars when we know the outcomes will be horrible? We don't seem to learn anything from past mistakes. These things elude our sensory and our mental abilities. There must be something beyond all of these things that we have yet to discover. There must be an unknown, a beyond, an out there, a silent power beyond all the levels of our experience. And it is in the pondering of these things that religions begin, as Evelyn Underhill said. And they endure because of an awareness that there's something that transcends, that goes beyond our knowledge, goes beyond our sense experience, which some call the other, some call the one, some call the divine, some call God. We may not know much about it, but we have a sense that there has to be something there. The second reason I believe in God is because of the witness of religious people, the witness. Every culture we know anything about has developed some kind of religion, some kind of effort to know the unknown, some recognition of a power or a force to which we must be reconciled. People worship in all kinds of ways. But basically, people worship because they want to put themselves in some kind of relationship with the unknown, with the transcendent, with that which lies beyond our normal experience. Over the centuries, people have experienced, or have expended, I should say, enormous energy for their religion. Sometime between 2000 and 1500 BCE, a long, long time ago, some people in southern Brittany moved some enormous stones that weighed hundreds and hundreds of pounds, many, many tons, into a circle so exact that it marked the progress of the lunar year. They placed some of these giant stones to mark the exact spot where the summer comes up in the exact middle of the summer. We don't know very much about the religion of these Stonehenge people, but we know that they had a sense of transcendence, an awareness of something beyond their normal experience that moved them to expend this enormous energy. A few years ago, Sally and I attended the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland in Edinburgh. I'll tell you more about that in a future sermon. But on Sunday, we worshiped in a 12th century church, a church built in the 1300s. And it was built out of enormous stones that had been carved square and stacked into place. It must have been a huge effort. I asked a man knowledgeable about this how they could have built that building without our 21st century technology. Well, he said, it's a matter of simple physics. Well, I accepted that. But I couldn't help think about the brute strength that it required to build that church. Faith in God stimulates amazing things. In religions, we Christians are the new kids on the block. Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, other religions existed for centuries before Jesus ever appeared on the scene. Only Islam is younger. Belief in God is a persistent thing. Religions go through cycles of decline and renewal, but they have a way of enduring. Ancient religions are still with us because somebody had a sense of transcendence. In many religions, including our own, we have seen people make huge sacrifices for their faith, even their own lives. And I'll talk more about that next Sunday. There must be something there. The third reason I believe in God is the religious experience of people as a testimony to faith. I've been writing a book on Christian mysticism. It's almost finished. It's not about fortune tellers. It's not about people who commune with the dead. It's not about those who predict the future. It's not about any hermits sitting on mountaintops. It's about people in the mainstream of Christianity who, over the centuries, one way or another, have had some kind of experience of the presence of God in their lives. Mystics are not confined just to Christianity. There are Hindu, Buddhist, Jewish, Islamic mystics, people who experience that transcendent element, whatever it is that we call God. The Bible is full of mystics. Moses heard God in a burning bush and saw God on Mount Sinai. Isaiah saw God in the temple, high and lifted up. Some of the disciples saw Jesus transfigured before them into something other than what he was. There are prophets in the Old Testament who come to us out of their experience and say, "Thus says the Lord." Not all religious experiences we hear about are authentic, obviously. But the way to evaluate them is to see how they impact a person's life. If they make an individual more compassionate, more loving, more caring, it was probably a pretty authentic experience. If they make a person judgmental, hostile, and angry, that's questionable. If anyone's interested in this subject, I'd be willing to do a little class on it here. So we have a great cloud of witnesses over the centuries testifying to the reality of God because of their experiences. Maybe you've had an experience in nature where you saw a scene that so overpowered you with its beauty that it made you see the world in a new way. Maybe you heard music that lifted you to a new level of awareness. Maybe you've been in a group where there was a flash of insight that gave you a whole new perception of reality. Maybe you were in church and something struck you at a very deep level. In my own experience, it's been a matter of looking back over my own life, trying to see where God was at work. When you're in your 80s, you start doing things like that. I look back at things that happened to me that I attribute to coincidence or chance or good luck or knowing the right people. But now, on closer examination, I see that there was much more there. That God was at work in my life and I didn't realize it. That he was setting me up for things that happened years and years later. I was born in Miami, but after I finished the first grade, my father's company moved us to Dallas. First Sunday we were in Dallas, my dad said, "We're going to church." My family always went to church. To ask, "Are we going to church Sunday?" was a completely useless question. My parents were Methodist, and somebody told my father about University Methodist Church, so we headed out that way, only to discover that it was under construction. Nobody was there. On our way home, we drove past Preston Road Christian Church. And my dad said, "I've heard of these people. Let's go here this Sunday, and we'll look for the Methodist next Sunday." So we went there that Sunday. We never did look for the Methodist. Now, did I become a disciple by pure chance? Maybe, but maybe not. I like to think that God had something to do with it because I have had a fantastic life and ministry as a disciple, and I'm very thankful for that. So look back over your own life. Don't look at just a single event. Look at all the things that led up to something. Maybe you will see the hand of God at work. Finally, the fourth point I want to make is that we live in the midst of mystery. As children, we all learn John 3:16, God so loved the world. But I like 1 Timothy 3:16, which says, "Without any doubt, the mystery of our faith is great." Without any doubt, the mystery of our faith is great. Religion is a matter of exploring mystery. We don't always know why things happen. Those of us who have faith admit that there's a lot more about God that we don't know than we do know. But we keep probing, we keep exploring, we keep searching. The writer of Genesis said, "In the beginning, God." That's a starting place of faith for many people. In the book of Job, when Job was struggling with his own faith, God asked him a whole series of questions. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Who determined its measurement? Surely you know. Have you commanded the mornings since the days began and caused the dawn to know its place? Have you entered into the springs of the sea or walked in the recesses of the deep? Have you comprehended the expanses of the earth? Job felt overwhelmed by those questions, and we would be too. But we have newer questions. What was there before the Big Bang? Why was there something, or why is there something rather than nothing? Why in our galaxy is the Earth the only planet that we can determine that has human life on it? There are so many mysteries to explore. No one becomes an instant Christian. It takes time. It takes learning. It takes growth. It takes a lifetime of probing and questioning. And that's one of the purposes of the church, this church. We work with people at whatever level of faith they have, and we try to encourage and stimulate growth by classes, by worship services, by fellowship, by events. We'll talk more about the church in a few weeks, But now our most important work is to help people find the presence of God in their lives. That's really what religion is all about. It's hard work. None of us feel qualified to do it, but that's no excuse. If we can help people grow and deepen their faith and get closer to God, that will lead to many other wonderful things in their lives. God will do so much with us, including leading people to lives of compassion and service to the human family. May God bless Twin Pines Christian Church as we try to explore this vocation. Amen.